Welcome back to the channel. Tune in or go stout. Something people don't tell you when you start trying to change your life for the better is just how to deal with and balance shame. When you start the journey of self-improvement, as corny as that sounds, you realize that you have to let go of a lot of past habits, whether that be the way you eat, the way you sleep, some not so great pleasures that you may indulge in. It will require you to look at life from a different lens. But something that I've seen plague a bunch of men is the overwhelming feeling of shame creeping into every part of their life. Many people don't like to admit it, but when you put a mirror to yourself, sometimes you just don't like what you see. But I think in there is what lies the problem, and until you understand shame, you can't improve and you'll only be wasting your energy. This is something I've came to the realization of pretty late in life. But once I was able to develop an understanding of what was going on, it made breaking through all the barriers I had much easier. Obviously, it's a ongoing journey. Some weeks I hit everything out the park. I'm super productive. I get everything I want done. And then some days I don't feel like doing any work. I'm a lazy bum and I'm not happy with myself at the end of the day. But I've understood that not feeling happy with myself at the end of a day's work, or because I didn't stick to a diet plan I had that day, isn't something I should carry on my shoulders 3 months later. And either I reconcile with the mistakes that I've made in this moment, or I carry them on my back to maybe not even take the chance next time. And that's the real slippery slope of shame. It starts off as very reasonable emotions that can even foster good change. And aside from the fact that it can ruin your mood without a warning, it's hard as hell to identify. Am I feeling shame for a mistake I made this week? Do I feel guilty because of the choices I made today? Or is my baggage and trauma digging up issues from my past, thus making me harbor regret? Like many people, I have spent several nights looking at the ceiling in my bed, thinking about how badly I fucked something up or embarrassed myself. The one that comes to my head the fastest was 2019, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I'm leaving a car meet with some friends. Just finished building this car. It was the first manual BMW I ever had. Just finished engine swapping it. Took it probably 300 miles up north. And as we were leaving one of the late night car meets, I wanted to show off, but I didn't know what the car could handle. And I guess I found out the hard way. It probably is driver mod. I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty trash back then, but I guess the slave cylinder in the clutch was not a good one, and it kept getting compressed on the floor. Because of this, when I tried to burn out, nothing really happened except the car stalling out, and I had to turn the car back on with the saddest look on my face. Luckily, I had tint, so I just drove away like a pedestrian, but everybody knew how I felt. And this is a normal feeling to have. This is regret. Everybody feels regret. Another feeling that people have is guilt. Guilt can be manipulated to get you to do something, or you can wield it against yourself to stop you from doing something. It's the feeling of deserving blame for an offense. And it doesn't always have to be criminal. We're talking on personal levels here. So to rationalize this in your everyday life, the easiest way to see it would be with diet. If you were on a strict paleo diet and you had ice cream that day, you might feel guilty for indulging and breaking the code that you set for yourself. It can come in many different ways, but this is also very healthy. Guilt can be a motivator for a lot of good change. It holds you to some standard and at least sets a moral compass for what you define as good or bad. If we had no guilt, then society probably would have been toast a long time ago. But if both of those are okay to feel and they're very normal, then where does shame show up and how does it manifest itself? And that's kind of the most insidious part of it all. Feeling regret and guilt are very normal things. Just like failure, it's something to learn off of. But in a world where it feels like you get more losses than wins, you can only learn so much before you start thinking that those failures are just a direct representation of you as a person. Something about regret and guilt are they're mainly inner conflicts. You run into people all day, every day at the grocery store, and you might not be able to tell what they're feeling, but they know what they're feeling. Their inner dialogue knows what they're feeling, and the way they communicate to themselves expresses how they're feeling. Whether it shows up in anger, self-loathing, our insecurities, or even our excessive need to people please, the framing of the comments that we let off in our mind 24/7 do shape how we feel about ourselves. And when you feel like you're falling short compared to the people around you, it's hard to build up a perception of you that can actually accomplish a task. And it doesn't have to be a major failure. For me, one of the earliest traces of shame in my life was math. I was great in every other subject, but the one that mattered the most, it seemed like. I gravitated towards history and the arts, but when it came to adding numbers and doing division, I failed each time. time. And I remember putting in so much time just to get a 70 when I saw my peers doing it with little to no effort. Even though I was still moving up into the grades, it was hard to justify why I was trying so hard just to end up feeling so bad. This lack of feeling like I could conquer math led me to avoid school and even start skipping math class in my high school years. And the thing that made it worse was because I was so intimidated by the class, the thing that I needed to do to gain the skills to pass the class and be like everybody else were hindered. I remember just constantly being in a mental daze. I was sitting in the class with everybody else, but I felt like the room was just not making sense. And answers that I knew that I would study and understand by myself went completely out the window when I was in that space. I just couldn't find any chance to focus. And this bled into a lot of my high school years academically. Don't worry, I managed to graduate on time, but it was a real battle with math. I just hated it. I ended up somehow getting honors math in my last 2 years, which is like the worst thing ever because it just put more stress on my plate. And little did I know, the entire time I was developing a very bad character trait. I was destroying the perception and value that I had in myself. I started viewing myself, the mind, the voice, the body, as the person that was getting in the way of me achieving what I needed to. And because of that, I should probably try to achieve less. I know that sounds crazy. I know that's crazy, but I struggled with math like from the jump. I caught on to reading, I caught on to everything else, but as a kid even, I was just trash at math. Once we stopped addition, it was downhill, especially when it came to fractions, bro. It was cooked. It's crazy that I'm admitting that I sucked at fractions at 28. Crazy work, man. But this set up a lot of negative thinking in my brain that I didn't even realize I was doing. Because I was already used to the failure and couldn't get past that hurdle, and I just couldn't stop comparing myself to the people around me, whether it be my cousins or the other kids in school, doing better at math, I ran into the biggest boss of them all, which was the fear of judgment. I had to just find a way to work harder or conceal my lack of knowledge so I didn't worry people. And not even necessarily worry, but let them know that I was struggling. And some might say it's because I didn't feel safe in my environment, but I did. Or at least I think I did. I remember just not wanting to seem dumb. Instead of understanding that I was just not getting it and that was okay, but instead my mind was just telling me,
no, you suck. Like, you actually suck at math. It's not hard at all, and you shouldn't be having problems with it.
If you even say you have problems with it, people will laugh because it's so easy.
This caused me to hide the problems I was going through and slowly made me an isolationist when it came to my emotions, feelings, or things that I was going through, which again was another terrible choice to make because in silence is where shame loves to run wild. It's like in the scary movies where something's over their shoulder, but every time they look over their shoulder, it doesn't pop up, but the viewer knows that it's over their shoulder. Until you deal with the underlying problem, shame will always linger in you. And what was the underlying problem? For me, it was being too hard on myself. I know that sounds very corny and generic, but if I've learned anything from self-improvement, it's understanding that the journey of being a well-rounded man is constantly having to fight with your younger self that had no self-control and teach them what grace is. Because that old mindset that you once had will constantly ask you to slow down on your road to progress. I know I really focused on my academic troubles, but the insecurities I acquired from that problem spilled into every part of my life. I could have done better in my first relationship, and when I look back at that too, I see a lot of the same symptoms that I saw academically manifest in that. I avoided connecting on deeper levels. I concealed a lot of my problems. I expressed a lot of my concerns in the worst way, and I was overprotective because I thought so little of myself. It quite literally was influencing everyday decisions. So when it came time to make a change and actually improve on myself, it made sense why it didn't go without a fight. It villainized opening up myself to the world. It saw the damage that it assumed I faced at the hands of the world, but didn't realize that I was facing at the hands of my own creation. So to overcome that part of your brain, you have to know how to deal with it. And the default answer for a lot of things seems like forced compliance. The mindset that says, I will outwork the bad part of me. If I stay consistent and I grind every day, then it doesn't matter how I feel. I'll just do what I need to and almost go into a robotic form. While some people can do this, I've seen this be the downfall of a lot of people. To accept improvement in oneself is to be open into humility. Shame is rooted in your perception of self, so that goes to your ego. And if you think you're gonna out-ego your ego with even more ego, I have bad news for you. It ends the same way every time. Just like when you gamble, the house wins. The emotions and problems that had time to fester for decades usually come out on top if you don't have a game plan. When I say act in humility, learn what you're trying to foster. You're trying to break a scarcity mindset and replace it with a growth mindset. The first step is realizing that you don't have all the answers, and the answers that you've been giving to yourself have kept you stuck in the mud and unable to make any progress forward for the risk that you might get hurt like you did in the past. When you have predetermined outcomes, you become unteachable. If you're always on a defensive stance, then you're never going to make a push on offense. So try to make yourself open to learning or being teachable, and put down your guard when it comes to protecting the reality that's harming you. And that means accepting the present. And to accept the present, you have to make peace with your past. With this idea of amor fati, which translates to love of fate, the formula for greatness in human beings, it called for people to reject self-pity, reject regret itself, and to affirm life. When you're stuck in shame, you're rejecting the hardships of life. You're finding some sort of comfort because you've been hurt before. And this is shown in the fact that shame really comes as a trauma response for a lot of people. And to affirm life on a high degree, you have to understand that the positives of life are just as valuable as the negative parts of life. It teaches you to find deep value in adversity, and without them, you probably wouldn't see the growth that you're chasing after. If self-improvement was easy, everybody would be a master at it. But the ability to stumble off a path and find your way back seems to be one of the hardest tasks we've been faced with in our lives. It's easy to get on the path, but once we feel the slightest bit of turbulence or pushback and we stumble, most people drift further, finding comfort in the unknown because the road ahead of them seems so rigorous. To overcome shame, you have to go and shift your perspective. Instead of resisting the road that you're on, see it as a chance for self-discovery and resilience. To fully understand resilience, the ability to bounce back from stress, adversity, trauma, and have your mind think in a flexible way that can help you regulate those emotions inside of you, telling you that you aren't worth it, into a voice that tells you that you just need to work a little harder. One of those is fixable. You can always work harder, but if you think that you're not worth it, becoming worthy is one of the hardest challenges you'll ever attempt to go through in your life. Because when you set unreachable standards, you realize that none of us are worthy. And this is the trick that shame puts on your brain. It doesn't only judge you. It does not only feed off your guilt, but how you view others and how they should deal with guilt. One thing they don't tell you about, like I said, is the grace factor in life. People love to motivate men by telling them that they're weak, they're stupid, they're not achieving enough, they're not doing enough. But you hardly ever hear that it's okay. It's partly because they're trying to sell you a course, so they have to feed off your low self-esteem, but it's also partly true because they have a lot of shame and they have not found how to shake that feeling either. Something I want to end off with, because as much as this is a self-progress channel, you realize that progress can only go so far by yourself. And the same thing is true with stress, guilt, and any of these emotions that you feel. If you let them weigh like an anchor on your back, then you don't realize that this also impedes how you judge other people. And sometimes rightfully so. The shame that you feel or project on someone else is more a testament of the actions they've done against you. I'm not gonna lie, this is something that I put off for a long time and didn't want to accept as true. But for some people, I'll use an example. If you get cheated on, you'll probably hate that girlfriend forever. You'll probably shame her, you probably won't have good interactions with her, and it'll plague you for years to come. And while that seems like a very rational reaction to have because you were wronged so severely, you not being able to let go of that thing is going to determine your actions past that point. And that's what you need to understand. Shame is a self problem, but it also influences how you view the world in general. That is people, interactions, socializing, making friendships. When you carry baggage of the past, it impedes any movement in the future. I know it feels like I'm repeating the same thing, but you have to let it go. You have to give yourself grace when dealing with guilt so it doesn't become shame. If you take anything away from this video, that is the message I want you to hold close. It is okay to mess up. It is okay to say, damn, I embarrassed myself. Man, I didn't keep that promise I made to myself. I messed up today, but I hope I can fix it tomorrow. But it is unacceptable to say, I am the embarrassment. I'm incapable of achieving my goals. The mistakes that I've made prove that I'm a failure. Reframe how you think about yourself. Because while self-depreciating jokes outwardly are one thing, when your inner monologue has nothing positive to say about the person that they're critiquing, what do you think happens? That's death by 1,000 cuts. And I think you have a lot more to offer than that. But again, what do I know? Just an unemployed guy playing Call of Duty, sharing my opinions. I hope this made sense. I felt like I rambled for a lot of it, but I feel like shame is a very elusive thing that encompasses a lot of different feelings that you kind of have to tackle mentally, cerebrally, and intentionally. If you agree or disagree, let me know down below in the comments. I do read the comments. Have you been dealing with shame? Are you in a point to where you feel like you've overcame it? And if you have, what are some things that you did to reach that point? If you haven't already, like and subscribe to join the thread. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Until next time.